Here with the most dangerous, scariest man on the internet, Jason Bermas. We were just talking. Jason, you literally just said, "Why am I so scary?" You know what? Maybe we should open this stream by posing that question. Why do you think you're so scary? And then we're going to get into all kinds of specific topics. But actually, what I'd like to jump from there, besides why you're so scary, and then just who you are, generally speaking. I just remembered, I really want to talk to you about the new news about vaccinated. This is, I'm reading directly from the NPR website here, which says vaccinated people can spread Delta variant, suggests data behind the CDC mask guidance. And here it says, it found no significant difference in the viral load present in the breakthrough infections occurring in fully vaccinated people and the other cases, suggesting the viral load of vaccinated and unvaccinated persons infected with the coronavirus is similar. Now, you know, this is like we were just talking again before we went live about why can't you say things 20 years in advance? You know, you have to wait for the government to say things before anyone's allowed to talk about it. So we're going to get into that too. So anyway, that's my big teaser for what we are going to talk about with Jason here today. Everybody who's watching on YouTube, this is my disclaimer that we're going to talk about some interesting things at the beginning, but we are then going to nuke the stream. Jason and I both follow the same protocol. So if you want to watch all of it live, you got to go to ROKFIN. It will be up later on my other platforms. But if you want to watch live, you got to go over to ROKFIN to see the whole thing. Okay, Jason, without further ado, why are you so scary?
That's the big question. Yeah, right? Because I don't think I'm that scary. Anybody that meets me in person or has a beer with me or runs into me on the street doesn't know who I am. They're not frightened. Like, it's not like they run away from me. I think the big thing is I've never played team baseball, right? I've never identified with one side or the other. And a lot of these people knowingly compromise their conscience, their common sense, their own discernment to play ball with this group that says, I'm a liberal or I'm a conservative or I'm a Democrat, I'm a libertarian or blah, 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 all nonsense. And they can't take issue by issue. Let me give you a really great example of this, okay? First of all, you know, for anybody that, you know, I'm wearing the loose change shirt, thinks that I'm a conspiracy theorist. I like to think of myself as a realist. Number one, I was one of the first people out there decrying and debunking the QAnon phenomenon for a reason. And one of those reasons is I've talked about high-level pedophilia for well over a decade, maybe 15 years. Let me just give you some examples of high-level pedophilia anybody can look into today, and it won't be about secret codes on message boards, okay? Dennis Hastert at the time was the longest serving Speaker of the House, okay, under the Republicans, not the evil liberals or Democrats. We're not talking Wiener's laptop. We could sure talk about, you know, Wiener's indiscretions. That's a real one, okay? But Dennis Hastert was molesting kids before he got into politics. He was molesting kids as a gym teacher and a coach. Do you think that serial child molesters, as labeled by a judge, stop as they gain more power? They do not. He never served any time for that. He did 15 out of his 18 months because he tried to pin one of his victims on extorting him for abusing him as a child and keeping it shut. It took an investigation that was hush-hush. That's one.
Okay, real fast. The reason I was kind of chuckling about it is not specifically because of the topic itself, but because I guess the reason, did you bring that up because when people discuss that now, it's like you're QAnon. Is that why you're bringing that up? Because that's a topic that took people a long time. I probably still aren't warmed up to, and that's why you're scary.
Allison, you had Inside Edition do a piece on how loose change was really the birth of QAnon. Esquire did a piece where I had to tape my interview with the gentleman, and I said I wouldn't air it, and I never did, as long as he came on after he put the piece out. Okay, and that was this year because of, I believe it was the 15th anniversary or something like that of Loose Change. You know, he wanted to look at it 15 years later and again, try to associate it with the birth of that QAnon movement. And in his own article, he had complete fake news, which I disproved. And I go, you know, you won't get a fact check for that. You and Jim Meggs won't get a fact check for that. I do it because there are so many things out there that we don't have to speculate on. And then there is that guilt by association. And it isn't even that. Vice did the same thing, trying to associate our film with the birth of QAnon. And that's not a thing. I've never told people that, you know, white hats in message boards with super secret decoder rings are going to save us from the evil people. I've always told people, if you've seen my Twitter, I have a hashtag that's been there since the inception of my Twitter, be your own hero. I am a beauty school dropout, Allison. I'm a college dropout. I'm nothing special. You know, for me to be one of the guys that's putting the real information out there and then seeing people distort it in a manner that makes me less credible is upsetting. So I think it's that, right? So I won't play team baseball like Trump, for instance. Before Epstein got arrested, and anybody can go to my YouTube channel, and when I made my comeback, I was heavy on Epstein because when I was at InfoWars, I'm the first guy Alex Jones ever gave a show to. I was big on the Epstein case because we didn't know a lot about it, but we knew it was connected to all these high-level people. And I was like, this is something. We need to be looking at this. But then you had people decrying, saying, well, Trump doesn't know Epstein. And I was like, whoa, guys, obviously you have no idea what you're talking about. Filthy Rich had been out at the time. That clearly made a connection business-wise between Trump and Epstein. Doesn't mean he's a pedophile. But there were also reports out there that Trump and had Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein on his plane. Now, I would point this out, and I would get some big accounts, DM-wise, you know, that are on that right level. Hey, man, you know, Trump doesn't know him. And then a video comes out, you know, 6 months later, and I'm vindicated, right? But there's always a spin for those people that want to believe in superheroes, right? Like when Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail and they ask Trump about it, and he says he wishes her well, you know, I got a big middle finger for the guy. I don't wish her well. I wish that her and her network would be exposed and they do criminal time. So I think that's why I'm so dangerous. I don't pull punches based on cults. And people don't like that. It's kind of disturbing to me that people can't be honest with themselves, Allison, but I think that's the main thing.
Okay, you brought up a lot. One thing I'm very grateful you brought up is how to pronounce, is it Ghislaine? How do you say it? I never know how to say it right.
Well, the only reason I know that, and if you go back through my videos, I've said it a dozen different ways, but I was actually the last person to get Maria Farmer to do an interview. And she is, and this is another astounding thing, and I want people to think about this. This is how corrupt the system is. She went to the FBI and the NYPD about Jeffrey Epstein in 1996. Now, there were no public records in the media about that until 2018. When Maria Farmer went to the media about it, she had to go, and they confirmed that those reports did indeed exist. They never arrested the guy. We don't find out until 2008 he has the ring in Palm Springs. Do you really believe there were no other police reports? All I'm saying is I had her on, and like, you know, we talked for an hour and a half, and he never got arrested. That should show people how corrupt this whole thing is. Then he doesn't kill himself twice in prison. Like, I don't know what else to say.
Can we get into Epstein? I mean, as long as we're talking about it, sure. What happened? What happened there in jail? Tell us what you think really happened.
Well, I'll tell you what. The suspect number one to me would be Bill Barr, another person that I warned all the and another reason I had a big contention with this kind of alt-right sect, including, you know, I had Alex on the program last week, and we kind of jabbed at each other at the end about Trump, and I mentioned Bill Barr, and he kind of laughed, but I'm like, hey, man, Bill Barr ain't your friend. So just to give people the history on the guy that you thought in the Department of Justice was going to bring you the truth about the Epstein case. First of all, he had to publicly state he might recuse himself because he worked for Kirkland Ellis while they represented Epstein on a number of issues in the past. That's one. Two, Bill Barr is a career CIA guy, literally in the Central Intelligence Agency as he goes to law school and passes the bar exam. That's a big red flag. Three, Bill Barr and his buddy Robert Mueller used to work together. Okay, they're buddies. He literally, as he was getting picked to become the youngest attorney general ever under George H.W. Bush, there was a thing called Iran-Contra that was out there. Okay. And by the way, I truly believe that's where this Epstein network leads. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Oh, 100%. We'll get into it in a moment. Okay. But Bill Barr himself and Robert Mueller, at the same time of writing up the legislation on how to bring Noriega over. Okay, so for those that don't know, Manuel Noriega was our buddy before he started talking bad about the U.S., and he was part of these black operations in South America. So him and Mueller had worked together. He becomes the youngest attorney general the first time under George H.W. Bush, and he is named by one of the smugglers in Iran-Contra as the fixer at Mena, Arkansas, okay, as a guy named Robert Johnson. All these things were previously known. Anybody can look them up. And why would I say Epstein is involved possibly with the Iran-Contra network? Well, first of all, when they went into his New York apartment and they found a passport with a different identity and a Saudi Arabian address, okay, we got to get there, that was long expired. He's connected to Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father is absolutely Mossad, was outed by Seymour Hersh and others decades ago. All right. Now, her dad's Mossad. He's obviously working with intelligence agencies, and they're both connected to a guy named Adnan Khashoggi. Khashoggi's name actually comes out during the 80s and Iran-Contra. And here's where it gets really interesting. So Khashoggi helped facilitate a lot of the arms deals. What people don't understand about those arms deals and why Mena, Arkansas is important. Mena, Arkansas, by the way, is while Bill Clinton is governor. That's why he got the Bush push. Okay. He'd already done some really great black ops work for them. In fact, American made the Barry Seal fictional. I like to call it fictional because that thing is 90% bull, total nonsense. And it was supposed to be called Mena. The director's father was a prosecutor on the case, by the way. Okay. And they have a little Clinton moment there, but I'm getting away from the story here. So anyway, these guys are doing these deals. This is how it worked. The guns were purchased by Israel. Israel would buy them from Czechoslovakia and Poland, and they would ship them down to South America. And then South America, you would have our pilots take back drugs and, whatever little black goodies, but they wouldn't bring back weapons. And they would land them in airfields in military bases in Florida. And guess what? Mena, Arkansas. Okay. Bill Clinton named in these books as well. This is a real cartel with a real history, with real court documents that anybody can read and real mainstream news reports.
Now I'm not only concerned I'm going to get suspended from YouTube, but possibly killed by the Clintons. So I don't know. So anyway, it was nice having you on, Jason. We'll see you next time. No. Okay. So, all right. Where were we? You know what? Let's go back to Epstein. How does that have anything to do with Epstein, though? Did you make
I'm saying,
on that one?
All right. Because Epstein, again, in the 80s, is doing all these things. He has a Saudi Arabian address. Remember, Khashoggi is with those Saudi Arabians. You want plausible deniability in these things. The other thing they don't talk about with Prince Andrew, everybody knows he's a prince, right, Allison?
Mm-hmm. I watched The Crown.
Yeah. Did you know he was the UK's largest arms dealer?
I didn't know that.
Oh, well, at the time that he was when you're looking at human trafficking and high-level drug dealing, you're also usually looking at arms deals. And that's the big secret. And that's what this network is. And that's how you compromise people. That's how you get better deals. And that's what was going on with the Epstein network. It wasn't just blackmail. It wasn't just Israeli or CIA. This is a real cabal. And that's the thing. You heard all these terms on the message boards and all these things. I encourage people. In fact, I just put it up on ROKFIN for free in the highest possible quality. I actually upgraded it to 720p. There is a large Iran-Contra scandal, like I'd say as long as the Bill Gates part in Shade the Motion Picture in my film Invisible Empire. And you will see everything I stated, minus the Epstein stuff, is all in front of your face. And then you realize, oh my God, Prince Andrew's dealing arms as well. And he's totally connected with Epstein. And Epstein himself is moving all these deals and they don't know where his money's coming from. Well, I'll give you one guess.
I'm supposed to guess.
I mean, come on. I mean, what do you think?
One thing of where it comes from.
When you
my God, Saudi Arabia.
Well, no, it's arms deals. It's arms deals. It's like
okay. I see what you're saying. Okay.
All right. So you have Les Wexner hasn't been picked up, right?
Yes.
But you do have Jean-Luc Brunel, and you also have Paul Nygaard. They will burn people. There's no doubt about it. Like, I don't think they wanted to burn Epstein. I think that you had so many localized people that had enough in the Southern District of New York that they said, you know what, we're going through this anyway, right? You notice it wasn't a federal indictment on the guy. And then what happened? They had El Chapo at that prison, Allison. And nothing happened to El Chapo in the Metro prison. For the fiasco to happen twice and us not to have any footage twice. And we have reports, by the way, that Bill Barr was in that prison. New York Post reported on it the week before Epstein didn't kill himself. We have reports from Epstein's lawyer that the first incident involved Nicholas Tartiglione, a former New York police officer who executed 4 people on an upstate New York farm in a backdoor drug deal. Okay, so that was his.
How are any of us still alive? How are you still alive?
I'm just a guy that runs my mouth and everybody laughs at. I look like a reject from the Jersey Shore 10 years ago.
How do you get from level of like, you know, you get suspended on YouTube, but everybody's laughing when you're talking, or, you know, you're like the favorite on ROKFIN or something, to the level of like you're assassinated? Like what is there an in-between there? You know, just trying to figure out so that I don't end up in the second category, and just because, you know, I'm like former mainstream news, so totally asleep, coming out of the grave right now, trying to figure all this out. So you tell me how to avoid getting Epstein.
Listen, first of all, I don't think about it. I want to live a long and full life, and I'm a very happy guy. You know, like, in fact, we were DMing back and forth today. I was at Chuck E. Cheese with my niece.
Which is the scariest place on earth. Every time I go into a Chuck E. Cheese and I see those robotic musicians, you know, the band where it's like, and they like, you know, do this thing. It is so scary. I hate Chuck E. Cheese.
I had never been to one, actually, until like a few weeks ago. I went to one with somebody who wanted to go. And then I had some extra credits. And, I live with my 2 nieces and my sister. Help take care of them. So I was like, hey, do you want to go do this? There is no animatronics, but I'm generally a happy, fun guy. Now, I don't worry about those things because I look at it this way. I'm not going to live my life on my knees or center my own thoughts because of how other people feel, or because I think I'm going to be in danger. Now, that doesn't make me a moron. Okay. I will say this: people with firsthand knowledge and people that go to whistleblowers time and time again, they tend to, you look at the Assange case. You look at, I believe it was Hastings. That was a pretty interesting case. And even myself and Dylan, we went down and we interviewed a guy named Barry Jennings about Building 7. He was in Building 7 with who was it? Giuliani's right-hand man, Michael Hess. So Michael Hess was like the city comptroller. He was right next to Giuliani. And what had happened was the Office of Emergency Management was in Building 7. Now, I have chapters on this. You can find this in my film, Fabled Enemies. Now, we went out and interviewed him because we had found news footage. We'd gone through so much news footage that he had been trapped in the building with Hess. And you could see videos of them, and that they got pulled. And you were wondering why they got trapped and nobody else was there. And he said that he showed up. You know, he had a city position. He ended up getting the key to the city, by the way. And all the elevators were off. There were still, people downstairs. And he went up, and it was just empty. Him and Hess went up together. And basically, he said there were still coffee steaming, sandwiches gone. So they had evacuated the Office of Emergency Management, where whenever something like this went down, that's where they were supposed to be. It was a new facility they'd recently built, by the way. That building had the largest CIA base outside of Langley, Virginia. It had the Securities and Exchange Commission in it. It had all the Enron documents in it. It had a multitude of other organizations in it. All of a sudden, they're like, all right, we need to get out of here. So they start going down the stairs because everything's off. And he says they get down to about the 8th floor, and an explosion happens from underneath them and blows them back up. And he's hanging on something, and they end up going, I think, to the 10th or 11th floor and eventually get rescued. So we went and we got his entire account, which anybody can find in full. We didn't coerce anybody. We didn't magically edit it to say certain things. And he told his story. And 6 months later, he recanted his story on the BBC. And 6 months later, he was dead of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, fast acting. And Dylan, to his credit, I still remember it. I remember what had happened. After we had it out there, immediately we put it out before. We didn't end up putting in Loose Change Final Cut, but I put it in Fabled Enemies after the fact that he had died, actually. So from the time that we interviewed him to the time that we put it out, to the time that he had recanted his story on the BBC and they interviewed Dylan, and he had the video, and he goes, this is what he said. And they even played that part. I remember the BBC guy was really smarmy, and I saw him down at Ground Zero, and we had been trying to contact Barry for like a month beforehand, and say, hey man, we weren't trying to, all these things. And, I mentioned to him, I go, dude, we've been trying to get in touch with Barry, and we got nothing. Have you heard from him? Oh, he's fine. I'm sure everything's fine. 2 months later, officially dead. He had already been dead for months, apparently. So Dylan, they made another reiteration, but they hired a private investigator. The private investigator gave him the money back and told him never to call him again. So I don't know what the private investigator found, about Barry Jennings and whether he died or whether he was relocated or what happened with him. But Barry Jennings was interviewed by the 9/11 Commission. And to my knowledge, his testimony to them has never been made public.
Let's go to a lighter topic called geoengineering. What is that? Because I was just watching your documentary Shade, and I was an environmental reporter in my past life, and I'd never heard of geoengineering before. So let's go to that. I mean, I was thinking we were going to ease into the topics, but we've already done Epstein, 9/11, and we might as well go into this. So how are we doomed because of this thing called geoengineering? Which, if you Google, I can assure you, because I just did to see if Jason was crazy. And it's all over the place. MIT's talking about it. It's just a thing. It's like a thing that's totally out there. If you knew to just even Google the word, in fact, I'll pull one up right now. Well, maybe we should really consider geoengineering. And then these are conversations that are just happening all the time, but I had never heard of it before. So please enlighten us.
Yeah. So geoengineering means a multitude of different things, but essentially what you're doing is you're modifying the weather, or, besides just, your local weather, the earth, the atmosphere, all sorts of different changes. And I want to be careful here because I'll remember, the big word out there that everybody wants to put with conspiracy theorists, right, is chemtrails. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was the most eye-opening to me is when I went to visit a woman and I visited her twice, did 2 film shoots with her. She's no longer with us. A woman named Rosalind Peterson. And she was out in Sonoma, Mendocino County, that area of California. And she was a conservative tree surveyor for the county. And basically she saw, these things in the sky, and she saw rapid tree degradation. And she coined the term not chemtrail, but prolonged jet contrails. And, you could talk about the MIT papers. You could talk about the 2 gentlemen that I bring up specifically in Shade. One of them, for instance, back in the day went on Colbert, and he talked about G6 airplanes and how they could spray aerosols into the sky and create this mist and cloud, and that could lower temperatures and trap CO2 or lessen the trapping of CO2 somehow. I mean, this is my big issue with all of it, Allison, and geoengineering, is that when you're putting something like barium and strontium and all these other things into the atmosphere without the populace's knowledge, you're going to have other effects. And these type of sciences are not new. I know that a lot of people were like, wow, they just used drones out in Dubai to make the rain come down. That's old technology. They used to do that of the Olympics. They didn't use drones then. So to me, and it all ties in, because one of the things that when she was talking about these prolonged jet contrails, she was talking about NASA and how involved they were with this climate science. And they're very involved. And what you have in my eyes is a movement to change the weather at will, to hide it from the general populace. Now, you could use this technology to empower people, but when they talk about something called solar radiation management, it's not just we're going to put some, dark panels down and we're going to absorb the heat. No, they want to mess with our atmosphere, and often clandestinely. So I'm very upset that this is happening, and it's happening in a manner that I think is demonizing human beings and going along with this idea that carbon needs to be taxed. Carbon needs to be a market. And these markets have existed. That's something we go into in Shade. Most people are unaware that these carbon markets that Gore and others have talked about are actually in existence, but they are. And you can also bet on the weather. That's another very odd thing. You're going to allow geoengineering programs, but you're not going to tell people when it's happening. And then you're going to allow people to bet on the weather. And that's been going on for over a decade. So, I mean, you go into the research, but ultimately, to me, geoengineering is something that will be revealed for the good of mankind. Most people will go along with it, and they will continue, instead, to demonize really the biological stuff that we do. One of the things the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has done, Allison, is in the 90s, I believe it was in South Korea, or friendly Korea, because you couldn't do it here. They were growing live HIV in corn. Okay, they were growing live HIV in corn, and those type of chimeric things are a lot more common, and I think much more of a danger to our ecosystem and our planet than carbon, okay, and CO2. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to hear, and that was one of even me. One of the very big hurdles I had to go over when I started learning about a lot of this stuff, that I was like, come on, they couldn't be lying about global warming, right? But I'm sure you're about my age. And for me, even before it was carbon, I remember that it was actually chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, and everybody was worried about hairspray and aerosols, and they were worried about the ozone layer, which you never really talk about that much, right? Because they said the holes in the ozone layer would never recoup and come back, and then they did. And, you know, it is a cyclical thing. So to me, demonizing anything that's invisible and anything that's a life force on the planet that all of us use is extremely dangerous. Meanwhile, these people are literally creating biological agents and warfare in labs. And I know the mainstream right now is talking about this lab leak. And I'm sure if you saw my Fauci and Rand Paul, I remember you talking about it. You'll know that I don't think this is a leak at all. I want people to understand biowarfare is not something that's new. We're in 2021. The Nazis were perfecting it before the end of World War II. That's where we got our program from. And if you don't think that these people would escalate to an era where they would wage biological warfare on the general populace, again, you're kind of stuck in la la land.
All right, let's go over to ROKFIN. But before we do that, you probably need a drink. So you should check out my sponsor. Go to AllisonWinePromo.com, AllisonWinePromo.com, and you get 50% off of my favorite Malbecs from Argentina, one from the third highest vineyard in the world, and 50% off shipping. So check it out. But I would like to announce my new sponsor. If you drink too much tonight after everything that Jason has said, you need coffee. And Twin Engine Coffee is primo coffee. It is from Nicaragua. Actually, we were talking about the Contra. So I don't know if those two, they're not related to my sponsor. Okay. Anyway, so, but I got to say, Jason, I am a big coffee drinker. Are you? You must.
Unfortunately, you know, I'm out of shape, Allison, and it's shameful. And I drink way too much coffee. I was on like 5 or 6 cups. I'm down to like 2, 3, and I need to start getting down to 1 and getting out to working out in the morning instead of coffeeing it up. That's the deal.
Yeah, I'm trying to cut, at least I'm getting into the decaf thing. But anyway, they do all their growing, selecting, roasting, and packaging in Nicaragua. So they keep a lot of their jobs local for people there, and they're USDA certified organic. Check them out, twinenginecoffee.com/Allison. And we will see you over on ROKFIN, and hopefully this stream will continue to live on YouTube, but we make no promises. That's why you should go to ROKFIN, and the link's in the description. Okay, here we go. Hang on. I'm trying to make sure I remove the right one. I don't want to accidentally remove.
You got to do what I do and get a.
Okay, here we go. I got it.
Yeah, you got to get.
Stringer's been acting weird, dude.
That's what I'm saying. I don't. That's what's cool about my set. I don't rely on StreamYard or any other service. I have a powerful PC that'll cost you a couple grand or less, and I can triple or even quadruple stream from it pretty easily from that software.